the cloud. And I'm admitting Clifford. And we'll see who else joins us.
Great.
Meanwhile, since we are recording, Clifford and everybody else, welcome to authors and hopefully a few readers chat. I'm Mike Krentz. I'm an author of medical thrillers, military fiction, and psychological thrillers. With me is a former Navy shipmate from the mighty USS George Washington, the Spirit of Freedom, way back when we were young naval officers, shall we say. Joe Navratil, Joe has written this book, Second Act. It's really a marvelous endeavor, and hopefully Joe will have an opportunity to describe it to us. We're waiting for Clifford to connect audio, but while he's doing that, since I happen to know that Clifford knows who you are, Joe, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself for anybody who's going to be watching this after the fact, and tell us more about Second Act.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks for hosting this. So, as you said, we served together, gosh, 25 years or so ago.
Oh, no, we're not that old.
Yeah, I know, I know. My beard's looking a little white though, so maybe that's an indicator. But yeah, I've always wanted to write. My name is Joe Navratil, by the way. Published my book Second Act just in September. Uh, my sixth attempt at writing a novel, so I finally finished one. And before we started the show, we were chatting that you know I finally had that book that I knew I would finish once the idea came to me in the middle of the night. So I wrote 3 chapters that night, and real briefly, um, my mom was told when I was a little kid that she resembled Audrey Hepburn. So all my life I was like, "Who's Audrey Hepburn?" And we watched some of her movies together in the days before VCRs and everything. And always had in the back of my mind, I got to find out more about this Audrey Hepburn. And once I did, I became fascinated with her. And then in the middle of the night, one time, living just outside of Silicon Valley here in Northern California, um, it came to me that Audrey Hepburn never really dies, nor does any classic movie star, because we can watch their movies at any time. But what if through Silicon Valley I took it a step further and reincarnated her through artificial intelligence and virtual reality? So that's the crux of my novel. My main character Bradley is an AI savant, artificial intelligence genius, and he meets someone online who convinces him to watch Audrey Hepburn movies and then reincarnate her. And he has a little romance with her, but beyond that, learns about her real life beyond the big screen. And that's a lesson for all of the readers that, the person I consider the best person who has ever lived um, is kind of presented to a new audience who may not have heard of her. So there's some plot twists and things in Second Act, and I hope folks will pick it up, and maybe we can do one of these as more of a book club someday, where we actually have Q&A coming in from readers about plot points and things like that. But until then, I'll go ahead and leave it at that introduction. I think some of the folks who may have joined us may have read it already and may have some questions as well.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Stephanie has joined us, and it looks like Clifford is on board. So we will just go ahead and basically, and there will be others, and we are going to just kind of free associate here for a minute, Joe and I, and then we'll open the floor to questions. Hopefully others will join us. If not, we'll just have a round robin going here. My name is Mike Krentz, and I am a retired emergency physician and also a retired Navy medical officer. And when we were both on the George Washington, I was the senior medical officer, Joe was the public affairs officer. And so neither one of us were line officers, so we were kind of, set aside from the mainstream, which was great. We had some wonderful times on Liberty, as I recall.
Yeah.
Anyway, my book, my first book, is called Dead Already. It is the first of a currently 3 novel series, medical thriller, featuring a main character who's Dr. Zach Winston, emergency physician, former naval officer, and it's not me. Not entirely.
Well, there goes my question to
Oh,
you.
well, I'm sorry. You can get back to it. Anyway, and he experiences a number of misadventures. The inciting incident of the first book is he has to resuscitate a man in cardiac arrest whom he saw the day before and sent home. And as an ER doc, that's not something you ever want to have to deal with. So, and turns out the guy's wife is the head nurse in the intensive care unit at that hospital, and it goes on from there. He eventually gets sued for malpractice, hires a lawyer by the name of Bridget Larson, and they become kind of on again, off again. Not exactly romance, but something like that. And that persists through now 3 novels, and I'm working on the 4th one now. So it's about conspiracies, basically. So that's it in a nutshell.
Love it. So,
Okay.
Mike, let me ask because I'm always curious. I know what my eureka moment was when I knew I finally had something after 6 previous attempts at completing a novel. When did you know with Dead Already that you had something you'd be able to finish and that other folks might want to read?
Well, as you know, Joe, we were just talking about this. I published 4 military fiction novels that were based on my experiences at my last tour in the Navy as 7th Fleet Surgeon. And they did okay, but Dead Already became more of a personal project. For one thing, I'd been away from the Navy too long. I really couldn't write coherently or cogently about the Navy because it had changed. So I decided to develop this character, Dr. Zach Winston, who's an emergency physician, and went from there. I'll tell you, the eureka moment for me was not something that sprang internally, but externally. I had written Dead Already as a first-person novel, and I went to a pitch conference in New York City, absolutely convinced that I was going to come back with a book deal.
Yeah.
And by the 3rd day of that conference, I realized that I wasn't even in the ballpark. So that was kind of a negative eureka moment for me.
Yeah.
So I took the novel back and changed it to 3rd person. And the real eureka moment was when I introduced a character that was not real. And that is Dr. Zach Winston's late wife, who died tragically in an aircraft accident as a naval aviator. And that was it. That was when I knew I had it, because now I'm not just talking about an ER doc who may or may not be in love with his lawyer, but it's suddenly gotten much deeper and much more complicated and complex for him. So that was it.
Yeah.
So what was yours, Joe?
Oh, mine was a little bit different. And for anyone that's read the acknowledgments, and Cliff here might remember, my my mom was told when I was growing up that she looked a lot like Audrey Hepburn. And I didn't know who that was as a kid. So long story short, I've always followed Audrey Hepburn, and in the middle of the night, I guess it's been about 2.5 years now. I just kind of woke up with this idea, living just outside of Silicon Valley, and thinking I could reincarnate Audrey Hepburn, which was really what I wanted to do. And then I kind of figured out a character that I thought would be a good counter to Audrey Hepburn. And then I'm like, okay, so I love her movies, but what do I really know about her? So I spent a lot of time researching, and she had a vibrant history here in San Francisco. As you can see, my background here of the Golden Gate Bridge. And so I went to the San Francisco Public Library and started researching about her visits here. And right after she was in a play called Gigi on Broadway in New York City, um, she filmed Roman Holiday in Rome, but it hadn't been released yet when she did now a national tour of that same musical, Gigi. And her last stop was in San Francisco. So went to the San Francisco Public Library, researched her time here, and then in the middle of the night, that same night, I was like, boom, what would it have been like to meet pre-stardom Audrey Hepburn on the streets of San Francisco? Yes, I know that's an old 1970s TV show. But what would it have been like to have met Audrey Hepburn before she was a star? Just happening to talk to her on the street. And I was just so carried away with that. I wrote for 3 hours that night, finished 3 chapters, and that was my eureka moment. I'm like, if I can write this scene and associate other scenes also in San Francisco, then I knew I could, finish this book. Then I had to put a lot of meat on the bones of my main character, Bradley, who's not at all like me. At least you were an ER physician. I am not an AI savant. I can spell AI, but that's about it. And I had to do a lot of research. So Stanford University was very kind to me. The internet was very kind to me. My son, who's working down the hall, works in tech sales in San Francisco, so he was able to fill in a lot of blanks for me. So that's how all mine came together, my eureka moment. And I just, my routine was writing 7 to 10 every night during the week and a little bit more on weekends. And I finished it in about a year. And then, as you said, the pitching process started, and here we are.
But Joe, I have a question follow up on that. And I understand that you had to do a lot of research, but AI is kind of a hot topic these days.
Yeah.
And my question is, how far removed from current or near future reality is the AI engine that Bradley developed to bring Audrey into his wife? I mean, are we talking science fiction, or are we talking something that's going to come out of Silicon Valley next week?
You know what? When I published the book in September, I would have said decades away. But in a couple of weeks, I'm going to Europe. My wife and I are taking a little getaway, and our first stop is to meet up with Audrey Hepburn's godson.
Awesome.
And he liked the book, and we were able to connect our planned vacation to Tuscany around stopping in Switzerland first, just outside Geneva. I said I wanted to visit Audrey's gravesite, which is open to the public. And he's like, I'm happy to show you around. By the way, I'm her godson, and I loved your book. So the ironic thing is he works in the technology that I thought I invented. So let me say that again. For those that haven't read the novel yet, my main character recreates Audrey Hepburn as initially, a 2D video representation, then eventually a hologram, and then the technology develops to the point where you, as the reader, don't even think about the technology anymore. You just think that's Audrey Hepburn and on Bradley's couch in his home in Palo Alto. So I was flabbergasted when Pier Luigi told me that he has been working on this technology, and his very first hologram model was his godmother, Audrey Hepburn. So two people who had never met but will in a couple weeks were he's real world, mine's completely fiction, but this technology is not, as I understand it, yet publicly available, but it's coming a whole lot sooner than I thought in the book. So I wrote second act with a couple years in the future in mind, maybe 2027. But now that technology may be available in 2027, whereas if you had asked me a month ago, I probably would have said 2040, 2050, something like that. So that's
Yeah.
how quickly this technology moves.
So I got to say, I enjoyed the book immensely, and one of the things that I enjoyed about it is you really you made Audrey a real character, even though she was artificially developed through this AI engine. What I think set your book aside and made it so believable was because you made her believable, and that was great. And I just wanted to pay you that compliment because
Oh,
that was
thanks.
a significant thing.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously that was my goal. And then for those that haven't read it yet, there's actually a section of the book past halfway, but before the final quarter, where I actually write maybe 80 pages in Audrey's first person point of view. So
Yeah.
Audrey is actually, I shift the POV to Audrey Hepburn herself. So writing as Audrey Hepburn, A, it was really fun, but B, I wanted to make sure I got it as accurate as I could for someone who had never met her and only knows her through biographies and documentaries and her movies. So um, at least some folks think I did a pretty decent job of capturing her voice as well. So I'm glad I did that.
Yep. Well, I'll tell you what, Joe, we've got three other people in the room with us, Clifford, Stephanie, and Jim Rodriguez. And if you have any additional comments or questions you want to raise, Joe, go right ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to open the floor up and see if our guests have any comments or questions.
Now let's see if they have any questions. If not, we can go back to filling some airtime for folks
Yeah,
who watch this later.
yeah. Anybody? Anything? Yeah. Jim, I see you were off mute.
Yeah,
There you are.
good to see you, Joe.
You too, Jim. Jim was the best man at my wedding.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
Long, long time ago, 35 years ago.
been a long time. So I was just wondering, of all people, why'd you pick Audrey Hepburn?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Why wouldn't I choose Audrey Hepburn? So I talked about this just a little bit before you joined, I think. So my mom was told that she looked like Audrey Hepburn, when I was a little kid, and I didn't know really who that was. And remember the days before VCRs and DVD players, where you had to like wait for a movie to come around on TV and maybe look it up in the TV guide. Well, that was my mom sometimes, and we'd circle Audrey Hepburn movies and set aside time to watch them. So yeah, Audrey Hepburn was always kind of a touch point because of that. And then when her movies became available, I started watching them all, and I just became really fascinated, like so many people are. And Audrey Hepburn is probably the most famous or followed dead celebrity on Instagram. She's got so many pages devoted to her. Um, and I have an Instagram page called Audrey Hepburn Novel, where I continue my research through that. But when I really got to the point of asking myself who was Audrey Hepburn really, is when it became more interesting to me. People used to say when she was older, so what's your greatest role? What was your favorite role? And she would usually say being a mother. But at the end of her life, a lot of folks don't know she was a humanitarian and went on UNICEF trips around the world, bringing the plight of starving children, into the news. and would go on these worldwide speaking tours to raise money for UNICEF. And it killed her. She kept ignoring this pain in her abdomen that turned out to be cancer that started in her appendix and spread. Folks thought it was just an amoeba that she had caught on one of the trips to Somalia. And it turned out it was cancer, and she's kept putting it off. So that humanitarian part of her actually did take her prematurely at age only 63. So then I started all over again with understanding who this person was in my mind, and went back to World War II. She barely survived World War II. She and her family would, in Holland, would pick tulip bulbs during the German occupation and grind tulip bulbs into flour to make bread. And that's what they sustained them. And she barely survived World War II. And I wrote a chapter about that, where my main character, Bradley, actually is her first kiss during a German bombardment of her town in World War II. And her gift to Bradley is that first kiss, and that's told in her first person narration as well, which was really fun to write. So yeah, just in my mind, the best person who ever lived, what she gave up, for motherhood, and then her humanitarian causes. And if you watch her movies, you're going to be fascinated by just her appearance on the screen as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. I'm sorry, I joined a little late.
No worries. You're a working guy.
No,
I
no
was
problem.
struggling with what other people don't struggle with and just joining. So
Yeah.
Oh,
interesting conversations.
there's a rule when authors chat on Zoom or like Facebook Live or anything like that, something's going to go wrong. And so you just expect it and you deal with it, and it's great.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, hello.
Oh, Clifford, then Stephanie.
No, go ahead. No, ladies
Stephanie,
first.
Stephanie,
Oh,
then
thank you.
Clifford.
Hey, Stephanie.
Hey, Joe. Was actually my boss for a while.
Oh, my sympathies.
He was actually a very nice boss.
Yeah, I know.
But you guys, I'm also retired, newly retired. I know you're not, Joe, but
That close.
that close. But you guys both talk about, the way you wrote chapters as if they just flew out of your fingers and onto the page. Do you have any insight into your processes for writing? Because I mean, this is something I would love to do too, but I'm just kind of stymied by, I have my ideas, but how do you start?
Can I take a crack at that, Joe?
Please,
Because
yeah.
I've been doing this for 12 years now. Yeah, there is no one right process, except the one that works for you. There's generally speaking, two classes of authors. One class is called plotter, and that's somebody who sits down and does an extensive outline of their entire book, does all the research, develops character profiles of all the characters, and has a very clear idea of beginning, middle, and end, and where it's going to go. And then they write the book. The other pole of that is the so-called pantser, who just starts writing. And has some sort of a concept and maybe has identified a character or two or three, but then starts writing. And Joe says he's a pantser.
Yeah. And what that means is right by the seat of your pants. That's why it's called a pants.
The problem with that, and I'm definitely, I will tell you, first of all, I am definitely not a plotter. I tried it one time, did a fairly, and it wasn't even extensive outline. And as soon as I started writing, I threw the outline away because I decided there was a much better way to go. Now maybe I had to go through that process to get to the point where I actually knew where it was going to go. So it maybe wasn't a total waste of time. So I consider myself a plantser. I do start off with a rough outline, and I know who my characters are. I know what my main events are going to be, and I sort of maybe know the ending, but it's never cast in stone. When I was first starting out, I went to the National Book Festival in Washington, D.C. It's back when it was still held on the Capitol Mall. One of the featured speakers there was Patricia Cornwell, who's written the Kay Scarpetta series. And she was taking questions from the audience, and somebody said, well, what's your next story going to be? And she says, well, I don't know, because Kay Scarpetta hasn't told me yet.
I like that.
And what that means is that if you're writing and you really get to know your characters, and Joe, I think you just told us how you did this with Audrey, and it's why your book is so well done. Once you get to know your characters are going to tell you if you're going off the reservation. They're going to pull you back if you're listening, because it's all really there in the subconscious. You just got to give it the chance to bubble up. So Stephanie, I don't know if I answered your question. The short answer is just start writing, and eventually you'll figure it out and you'll get there.
That's
But
very,
everybody's process is different, and everybody's process evolves over time.
thank you.
The only thing I would add is, when you have that inspiration or that eureka moment, like we talked about a little bit at the beginning, where you just sacrifice sleep or whatever to just keep writing. And once you have that, then you don't stop. I segmented 7 to 10 every night, on weeknights. I had a job, as you well know, Stephanie. So 7 to 10 every night, and then as much time on weekends without sacrificing family time. But knowing when you finally have something, that I still go back and read those 3 chapters. Where my main character meets Audrey Hepburn before she's a star in San Francisco. Now he creates that through artificial intelligence. It's not completely a random thing, and the reader's taken along as, okay, well, he invented this, but the conversation is flowing freely between them. He didn't script it out. And then as the technology develops in my novel, the relationship develops too. And I was just a snowball rolling down the hill at that point. I couldn't stop. If I had any little bit of writer's block, I just skipped 10 chapters ahead. I'm like, well, what would the ending look like? Let's write the ending. And then you go back and change parts in the beginning or middle to foreshadow that ending. And I have a major plot twist that drops some breadcrumbs here and there. But until that plot twist happens, you may not have seen it coming. Mike figured it out, and we're not going to share it here on this call for those that haven't read it. But feeding yourself like that, the excited moment, skipping ahead when you have a little bit of writer's block, it's just down and out fun. And you're just on a roller coaster ride. And as Mike said, the characters are telling the story, and you're just trying to keep up with the typing. And it's a wonderful thing when you get to that moment.
Thank you both. That's great insights.
Few and far between, but those moments are
I'm looking for that moment for my next book. I started 3, and I'm like, which one do I want to do? And until I have the inspiration that I had for second act, I may not finish any of those 3. I may come up with something completely different tomorrow, where I stay up all night long and write. You just have to, open space for that to happen.
Sometimes when I'm stuck like that, I just take my dog for a walk. And by the time I get home, I know what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to let the subconscious churn. Anyway, Clifford, your turn.
Yeah, well, Joe and I are cousins. I mean, you talked about your wedding 35 years ago. I was the ring bearer at your mother and father's wedding,
Oh my
you know?
gosh.
So, Joe's mother was my first cousin, and his grandmother was like a second mother to me. So, that's how we, that's what our connection is. But I read, second act, and I'm a software engineer. I mean, I've been a software engineer all my career. I'm retired now, but I was just really, on the level that you were talking about with the characters, that's one level, to look at the novel. The other level is the technology that you introduced. Okay, and let me tell you, it's coming. Okay, all the things that you had in there, there's no fantasy there. It's coming. And if you want to see a foreshadowing of that, XI just put out Grok 3. That's the artificial intelligence model. It just blow you away if you want to see something, and it's already, you can generate images. You just tell it, I want an image of Joe sitting on the moon, okay, in a rocket ship, and it'll create that for you. So the things that are in that novel are coming. Some of them are 5 years away, some of them may be 20 years away, but it's all there. Okay, and so I thought you were like a AI geek or something, okay? But just to pick it up, okay, the way you did, okay, you just nailed it. You just absolutely nailed it. So I was very happy about that. And that's my, I thought that was the, as a technologist, that's what I was following, and the characters were like, just a way of of introducing the technology. But then the more that I got into it, now, I mean, I obviously knew who Audrey Hepburn was, but now I never really watched any of her movies. So now I'm going back looking at, Roman Holiday and all of her movies, and I'm like you, I'm falling in love with her. So
it's easy to do. It's easier to fall in love with Audrey Hepburn than write a novel, that's for sure.
Yeah, so that enriched my life, in that respect. So it was a blast reading the book, and then but all the after things that came after it, also I would have never gotten into without reading the novel. So thank you, Joe.
Well, thank you, Cliff. I appreciate that. Yeah, my first shout out on the technology part is Stanford University's Human Virtual Interaction Lab, which I visited as I started writing. And they spent a lot of time with me, put me in the VR helmet, and and then answered a lot of follow-up questions about the realm of the possible. That was a lot of internet research. But if I had met this person I'm meeting in Switzerland in a couple of weeks, who's Audrey Hepburn's godson, if I had met Pierre Luigi beforehand, I wonder how that might have influenced the novel. Kind of glad I didn't, because I didn't want to spend too much time getting the technology 100% accurate. I understood it well enough that I could write a work of fiction about it. So it's really really gratifying to hear someone who's spent a career in that technology to say that it was pretty close to what may soon happen. I'm not sure I'll be around for it.
I was in the early parts of artificial intelligence. I haven't been connected with it in the last 20 years or so. I sort of went off more on the business analysis and data analytics. Okay, but I mean, I understood it, and I kept up with it. And again, I'm a heavy investor in Tesla, and with full self-driving and XAI and all that coming together. It's a convergence of those technologies. Okay. And, it's just exploding. I mean, you know, the advances are, instead of like a year, they're now weeks, you know, 2 or 3 weeks, and there's always something new coming out. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, it
But-
is.
Well,
But you
Joe,
had me fooled.
you did Joe, you did a great job of not doing deep dives into the tech stuff. It was just the right amount of techie stuff, techie talk, techie writing, whatever you want to call it, to make the process believable. But
Yes.
it could have been
Yeah.
you could have very easily gotten away from the main theme, which was Audrey and Bradley.
Yeah.
And so that was a good job. You
Thank
done
you.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even
Yeah.
talk about the technology.
I agree.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cliff.
I agree, but there's no, but it's not fiction. Okay. That's the thing that you know, I mean, I was just surprised that, you know, it's really foretelling the future. Okay. So there's like 2 lines. Okay. There's two levels to the novel. Okay. One is the Audrey Hepburn part and the, you know, you know, human interactions, and then there's the technology. Okay. And, you know, and I enjoyed both, you know, and they're connected beautifully. So that's,
Speaking of which,
I guess it's the geek in me, you know, that
speaking
know.
of which, how did you come up with, they say, hold this in front of your face. How
Yeah,
did you come up with this cover? Because it's got everything that Cliff just talked about.
yeah,
You got Audrey and Bradley, and Bradley's wearing his goggles, but then you can't read it on the screen. It says a novel of Hollywood and Silicon Valley, and this just totally captured the entire novel. Where'd you get your cover, Joe?
So I hired a book cover artist. Hi, Rachel Kelly, in case you ever see this. She lives in Virginia Beach, ironically, not too far from you, Mike.
Not too far from me,
Sure.
yeah.
But I found her on one of the author websites called Reedsy, REDSY. And she just understood the concept that I was laying out for the cover. So I really wanted it to be black and white. But I wanted a splash of color for Audrey. So as I hold up a copy of it too, let's see, over my face, right? Let's see. I'm gonna get it. There we go.
There you go.
So it's largely black and white, but Audrey's dress is blue, which is reminiscent of what she wore in several movies. This is her hairstyle from Sabrina, which Rachel nailed really well. And then Bradley has blue VR headgear here. So through his blue headgear, he sees color through Audrey. I wasn't going to change her hair color for anything other than dark, which is what it was naturally. So we went with a 3-color approach, and the Clapboard, a novel of Hollywood and Silicon Valley, came to me right at press time. I'm like, okay, I need a little something in case people don't recognize who those 2 people are or who Audrey is, because due to copyright, I could not show her entire face, or I could have used Bradley's, but then it wouldn't have been symmetrical. So
Yeah.
due to copyright, I could not use an existing photo, even make artwork out of it, or have Rachel make artwork out of it. So the Clapboard kind of is kind of a sub title to the book, a novel of Hollywood and Silicon Valley. Again, the accents on the Hollywood more important to me than the Silicon Valley technology part. That's just the vehicle. But yeah, it was my vision, which Rachel carried out really well.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Joe, anything else?
Thanks
Anyone?
for joining. Yeah, we'll post this online as well in case others want to see
Yeah.
it through various sites. But yeah, Mike, thanks for hosting, and thanks everybody for joining.
Okay, so once again,
It's
it's
a pleasure.
second act. Yeah, there. Oh, there you go. There you go. And my book, first of the medical thrillers, is dead already. And Joe, I forgot how we got in touch with each other after so many years from.
I discovered you on online. I said,
Oh
"Wow,
yeah, that's
I
right.
used to know a guy named Mike Krentz, and here's a Mike Krentz author. Gosh, he looks like the Mike Krentz I used to know."
Yeah,
And then I
yeah.
just sent you a note on Facebook, I think.
That's how it worked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. Last shot, anyone? Going once? Stephanie?
No,
Nope.
just want to say thanks to you both. This has been really interesting. Joe,
Great.
I
Yeah.
bought your book. It's sitting in my pile.
All
To read.
right.
And Mike, now I'm gonna go buy yours because that looks really
Oh,
interesting too.
thank
So
you.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank-
Mike, I'll be buying yours as well.
Okay, well, thank you all, and thank you for joining us
Mhm.
now. What we're gonna do, we think, this is the first time we've tried this. We have recorded this session, and then we will put the video up on our own social media sites, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. So unless you all object to being seen by thousands of followers of Joe and my, that's what we're going to do. But if you don't want us to do that, you can certainly tell us not to, and we won't.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, great.
I'm good.
I just thought I better check that. Okay, well, Joe, any last roses and razzes, as we used to say?
No, this is kind of cool. I have folks from various stages
Yeah.
of my life that joined today, and so thanks for joining. And yeah, I've got all of your phone numbers in case you have any follow up or just want to chat. So yeah, have a wonderful.
All righty. Well, in that case, thank you all. We'll let you get on about your afternoon, and Joe, you've got a couple hours left. You can do some writing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, bye y'all.
Take care, everybody.
Goodbye, all.
Bye.